On March 1543, the sun did something it had never done before, or has never done since. It vanished, not just metaphorically. The sun literally turned black for 3 hours, and scientists have no idea why. Hi, it's me, and this is my channel. In 1543, the most boring thing in the world happened. Nothing at all. At least that's what the records say happened, and it's one of the strangest things I've ever heard of. For 3 hours, the sun went from being an extremely bright ball of burning plasma to completely black, but there's no record of people noticing. People saw the sun, they just didn't write it down. And if you think I'm making this up, because the thought of the sun just turning off like a light switch is so crazy that no one would miss it, just listen to this. Between 1541 and 1544, there were 26 total eclipses, 10 annular and 16 total, and people recorded every single one of them. There are detailed written accounts and even contemporary artwork depicting these eclipses, so it's not like people didn't know what a solar eclipse looked like. They just didn't write down the one that happened in 1543. This is a real mystery, and while we don't know exactly why the sun went out for those 3 hours, we do know that it happened because we have satellite images of sunspots that show an enormous black hole where the sun's normal photospheric glow should be. So what happened? Well, one team of astronomers thinks they may have the answer, and their explanation is kind of crazy. You see, the sun is not a solid object. It's a giant ball of plasma held together by its own gravity, and plasma is kind of like a gas, except it's also full of charged particles, and this means that the plasma can conduct electricity. Now, normally, this isn't a problem. Electricity flowing through the sun's plasma is what powers the sun and gives off all that light and heat. But sometimes, under the right conditions, plasma can turn into what's called a superconductor, and when this happens, electricity can't flow through it at all. It just bounces right off. And if this happens to the sun, well, you get an enormous blackout. The astronomers who think this might be what happened in 1543 published their results in the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics in 2020, and they got their idea from studying a similar, though much smaller solar blackout that happened in 2017. That one lasted only about 18 minutes and was caused by a massive sunspot that disrupted the flow of plasma in the sun's atmosphere. The 1543 blackout was almost certainly caused by something similar. But if it was caused by a sunspot, why didn't it last longer? After all, sunspots often last for months. Well, it turns out that sunspots are actually magnetic fields, and they can change the way plasma flows in the sun and even cause it to stop flowing altogether. But they can't do this forever. Eventually, the sun's plasma finds a way to flow around the magnetic field and things return to normal. This seems to be what happened in 2017, but astronomers think that in 1543, something must have interfered with the sunspot, causing it to disappear after only 3 hours. What that something was, they have no idea, but they say it could have been yet another sunspot, a solar flare, or even a gigantic eruption on the sun's surface, known as a prominence. Now, this is just a theory, but it's the best explanation we have for this bizarre event, and it makes sense to me. A big magnetic field disrupts the flow of plasma and blocks the sun for a few hours until the plasma finds a way to flow around it again. But I think it's worth pointing out that other astronomers aren't so sure this is the right explanation. Some say there is just no way a sunspot could go from blocking the sun to not blocking the sun in just 3 hours. And others say we should unjump to such radical conclusions when there may be a perfectly simple explanation. Maybe people just didn't report it because it wasn't a big deal. I don't know what the truth is, but I do know one thing. If this blackout had happened just a few hundred years earlier, people definitely would have noticed. And given the scientific understanding of the time, they probably wouldn't have believed what they saw. They might have thought the end of the world was happening, and maybe it was. In the Mayan mythology, the end of the world happens in 260-year cycles, and each cycle is divided into 13 periods of 20 years each. And when the cycle ends, the world as we know it ends too. Well, it turns out that when you add up all the days in a 260-year cycle, you get exactly 365 days, or 1 year, multiplied by 20. In other words, every 260 years, the Mayans believed the world ended and began again. And it just so happens that 1543 was the end of one such cycle. And some people believe that's no coincidence. If you ask me, I think the sun probably did turn off for 3 hours in 1543, but not because the Mayans thought it would. Because no matter what your beliefs are, science will always try to explain the world around us and keep trying until it does. So what should we talk about next? Please let me know in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes.